Well, the thing is, as well, like we don't do intros, so it's
Nice.
basically like we just literally carry on the conversation where we started, and the notion of um the give the training. So obviously with the kettlebell, the book, and bits and pieces like that, and you talk about the podcast. Very little prep time for both of us. Very little uh topical of discussion. Then it becomes a guided discovery, and
Yeah,
that's what's good about it, right?
I
I,
love it.
I don't know if you've been on podcasts before that you've had to do pre-interviews for.
No, actually. Thankfully, no.
Yeah, I've been on a few, like 30-minute phone calls to to be on a podcast.
It
Like
seems like a waste of time.
you're taking the conversation a bit too seriously, mate.
You're
So
like, yeah, exactly. Like we're not talking about curing cancer. Okay, we're talking about strength training, speed training. You know,
yeah,
ease up.
yeah, exactly. So this is where I actually introduce you properly because, but now everyone gets you. They know where you're coming from. This is Alex Salkin, everyone. Um, just written a book, which is pretty cool. And we're being connected through Mike Kukowski. And everyone has, Mike's been on my podcast. I've been on Mike's twice. We know each other from the mastermind that we're in. But I always say, for everyone who forgets who that one was, it was the podcast I cried on because I cried on Mike's podcast. So the first time round. Second,
Nice.
so for everyone listening, they'll go, "Oh, that guy. I know who that guy is." Um, so other backstory: you're in Nebraska, spent one night in Piccadilly. That's literally everything that I know about you so far.
Yeah.
But let's go straight into like your evolution into training and how you ended up with kettlebells and all that sort of stuff, mate.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, if you know that I'm from Nebraska and I've been to Piccadilly, you know the most important parts, but I will fill you in on the minor details as well. So I was indeed born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, as you can tell from my mellifluous Great Plains accent in English, which I'm told is very soothing.
Yeah.
When I was young, and I don't know about you, but I was anything but athletic. I was anything but strong. I like to play outside. Like my parents' house had a creek right behind it, so we would, my brother and I, more me, I think, but I would like to explore the creek and run around and that sort of a thing. But I was never really in team sports. I did gymnastics for a time, maybe between the ages of 4 and 8.
Uh-huh.
And I liked it a lot, but after a while, it was like I was very fortunate actually that I stopped when I did. I think because I mean, gymnasts are like some of the most jacked up people, like all the running and jumping and falling and hit and stuff. I side note, but I very distinctly remember one of my classmates in the gymnastics class falling off a balance beam and like landing on the metal part underneath, and it was like, poor 6-year-old kid. He was just like bawling his eyes out. So I escaped that and many other fates that befall many young aspiring gymnasts. And then I went to just kind of like floating around. And I remember I was never like picked last for gym class, but it was like, second to last, when we were picking for team sports.
Yeah.
Um, and this continued even through high school, actually. I have a very distinct memory of we would weight train maybe like twice a week in gym class, and this was my junior year, which I know that you guys have different name for those sorts of. So
Yeah.
I was
Secondary
maybe
school.
yeah, I was maybe like 16, we'll say,
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
about that. Yeah,
That would be the peak of secondary school.
I got you. Okay, yeah, exactly. So same with us because it was like we had one more year left, basically.
Yeah.
After that, we call it senior year. I don't know where they came up with the names, to be very honest. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. It's like there's no rhyme or reason. One, two, three, four makes more sense, but
That's the
um,
year. That's the year where you finally get enough of courage about yourself. That girl that you fancied for 3 years, you make the move in the final year.
exactly, exactly. Um, I think that uh, that's probably the best way to describe that for any age. That's like just a universal sort of
Yeah.
an experience, I think.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's funny too, because I remember going to my prom. I asked my ex-girlfriend. She was my ex-girlfriend at the time. I was like, "Hey, will you go to the prom with me?" And And that was like the closest I got to that experience because I think all the other girls at that time, I was very dweeby too. They were a bit more out of my league. I had like the Clark Kent look going on
Yeah.
without the superpowers, like it was, those came later. This is the big point because those came much later. Um, but no, I remember in high school, even at age 16, we were weight training. Um, I think my training partners got a better workout stripping the plates off of the bar, to prepare me for like the bench press and stuff like that. I got buried under the on the bench once with a very small amount of weight because my training partner, I don't think he thought I was going to struggle with it. He just was like, so he turned around and talked to a friend, and then the gym teacher yelled at him, and yeah, it was very, very embarrassing. So that was the majority of my youth. And then it wasn't until around, I want to say I was like 19, I was friends with this guy named Trevor, and we discovered this movie called Ong Bak, which was featured Muay Thai.
Yeah, I know Ong Bak. Yeah.
Amazing movie, right? Like, we were instantly obsessed. And Trevor, he worked at Walmart. I don't know if Walmart is a thing in
there
Europe.
are Asda Walmarts, yeah. So the Walmart bought out Asda, which is a supermarket here, yeah. So
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so he worked at Walmart, and what he would do in the back room, he was in the produce section. He would throw flying knees at like the produce boxes. Like, this is this is kind of obsession you can only have as a teenager.
Yeah.
And we eventually found out that there is in Omaha, there is a gym run by a guy named Nick Doyle. It's still there. He's a two-time kickboxing world champion from Ireland who somehow ended up in Omaha, Nebraska. That's probably a much more interesting story than just my being born here. But so we started training at his gym, and my friend Trevor started showing me some basic bodybuilding stuff with dumbbells and what have you. And I didn't really connect with it all that well, but I could feel that there were changes happening, like I was putting on some muscle. And then eventually, my friend Drew and my Spanish classes at the university was really interested in this thing called a kettlebell. And this guy named Pavel, who was like this, rough and tumble, former Soviet special forces physical training instructor. And Drew invited me over to his house one day, and he said, "Hey, do you want to try a kettlebell workout?" And I had no real desire prior to that, so I don't know why, but I said yes. And I went over, and it changed my life. I got it very uncoordinated, very still not athletic, but I felt like the movements I was doing, I was like, this just makes sense to me. And that's how it began in earnest, that I started training with kettlebells. I was 21 at the time.
Wow, that's cool. How old are you now?
36.
Yeah, so I'm 34. So we're roughly the same age. So all of our cultural influences will be like the same. So
exactly.
Yeah, no, 100%. Long back. Wow. That is like a blast. And they had a sequel as well, didn't they?
They did. I saw it once. I didn't think it really stood up to the original. It wasn't as good, but it was still great to see Tony Jaa, just wailing on people. But it didn't have the same magic as the first one.
You know what I watched recently? Best of the Best.
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of Best of the Best?
It's a martial arts movie, I take it.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like a tournament style.
Oh, it's Team USA against Korea.
Say no more. I hope it's Team North Korea and that USA just completely annihilates them.
It's so, like, looking back at it now, it's so politically charged. It's ridiculous.
America used to make a ton of movies like that. What was it? Red Horizons, was that what it was called? Or Red Dawn?
There was Red
Patrick
Dawn.
Swayze.
Yeah. And then you had basically, like, there was that era. And I read Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, and he was basically like, when Bush stopped being president and Clinton came in, it was the death of Planet Hollywood and action movies, because Clinton's first movie was Forrest Gump, the first movie that came out in the Clinton administration.
There really was a special period of time where I would say it was like between the 80s, late 80s and the early 90s, where it was just like Hollywood could do no wrong. Like, the amount of amazing movies that came out during that time is insane.
Yeah, it was literally like, let's fuck some shit up, basically. Things are
absolutely
blown up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Okay. All the Indiana Jones movies.
Fell off my chair.
I saw that, but your speed training saved you, and you were able to get right back into place as you needed.
Oh, fuck. That's going in the clip. That's going in the clip.
Good, excellent.
But yeah, we'll come away from movies. I'm a
Sure,
big
sure.
movie. I love movies, a movie buff.
Likewise.
And but yeah, so Pavel, I remember he's come out with some real bad VHSs.
Yes.
Um,
Comrade,
yeah.
this is
And
Pavel.
what was his first book called?
His very, very first book, I think, was Beyond Stretching.
Yes. Yes. And it was the obviously the uses of weighted implements to help stretching, and there was lots of yogic influences in there, if I remember.
I think so. I actually never got it because I think it went out of print. You can probably buy some out of print copies now. I have the second version, which is Relax and to Stretch,
Okay, yeah.
and that was a great book. But I never got a chance to get my hands on Beyond Stretching.
I reckon I've got like a bootleg ebook version somewhere. Like
Nice.
that was the first thing when I got involved in S&C. It was like before it was like what bootleg movies can you get? I was like,
Exactly.
I need to get as many bootleg fucking programs of like photocopied books over the years. And it was like that was the sharing thing. It became like Pokemon cards on steroids, basically.
Exactly.
Actually.
Exactly.
But so with that, so I was on my background's team sports, and so I kind of, but I was really skinny. I was very slight. I'm 6'4" and 240 pounds,
Wow.
something like that. Where when I was 17, I was like 6 foot and like 180,
So
something
I'm very
like
curious
that.
if you have a program to add 4 inches to your height because I would totally buy that in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even bootleg it. I would actually send a carrier pigeon with cash in its beak to get that program.
It was literally like, and I got let go from a Premiership professional rugby academy when I was like 13 for being too skinny. And then literally by the time I was 19, I was like 6'4" and 95 kilos, big enough to play
Wow.
professional rugby. And so like, but my first thing, like you, was getting into the weight room. And like
Mhm.
that was a big thing for me, was needing to put on size and needing to
Yeah,
train and like get strong and get big and feel that confidence that weights give you and training gives you. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely. Oh, 100%. Yeah, like I think more than anything, the spark of confidence that you get when you start to get stronger and you start to see some results and you're like, hey, I can just keep following this process and you
Mm,
just get swole. Yeah, that's huge, especially as a young man, when you grew up thinking, I'm skinny, I'm not good enough, I got cut from the rugby team, and then all of a sudden, the power is within your hands to turn it all around. That's huge.
yeah. Rocky montages meets Commando. It's things are happening in life.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. With a side of John Rambo, just to round out the 80s references.
Yeah, love it. So good. There's going to be some people, because I have lots of coaches that are about 21, 22 that listen to the podcast, and this will be on YouTube and stuff. So people watching it and they'll be like, what is he talking about?
Well, we're going to educate them. And in fact,
Yes.
know that I know that this is going to be on YouTube too. I'm going to fix my blinds in the back because as you can see, I'm like turning into a silhouette,
It's
like,
gonna
the shadowy figure in an 80s movie. So
like
I
you're a mystic teacher.
I know. Well, now I should really start dropping some mystic bombs. You know what I'm saying? Because this would be the ideal time. But I need to bring myself down to earth so that I don't
Yeah.
seem like a total putz. This will take like 2 seconds. Hang
Yeah,
on.
no, that is good, man. That's good. The just for everyone listening, we've talked about some amazing movies and amazing time in cinema that you need to watch. And I promise we will start talking about training at some point. I'm going to segue right into that first kettlebell workout. My influence from kettlebell, like I came across, it was YouTube. So when I got taken under someone's wing who used to play rugby for England, and we did resistance machine circuits.
Yeah,
I just literally blew up like a balloon because it was so general, like it single joint exercise strength. It's like S&C 101 Soviet principles.
yeah.
Like, um, but then Zach Evernesh was huge, and like I still build my own gyms, underground strength all the way,
I
and
love it.
and but he introduced me into kettlebells, and I was like, and sandbags and training with kegs and just that way, and I was like, this is amazing. So talk to me more about from that first kettlebell workout and that whole evolution for you, because I'm really interested.
Well, what's especially cool, I'm very fortunate to have very good and dedicated friends, because literally at the end of that workout, my friend Drew loaned me a 25-pound kettlebell, about a 12-kilo kettlebell,
Yeah.
a copy of Enter the Kettlebell by Pavel and The Naked Warrior by Pavel, which is about bodyweight training. And it should then come as no surprise that, as time went on, and particularly a couple years after I really got into calisthenics training, and The Naked Warrior was a huge influence, because, this idea of squatting on one leg, or, one arm push-ups, and training calisthenics not as just a means of punishing yourself or conditioning, but actually building brute strength that carries over into other activities, was something I had never even heard of. I mean, it was so many. I hate to use like buzzwords, but the paradigms shifted so much for me. Like, you can squat all the way down. You don't have to stop at 90 degrees. In fact, it's better to squat all the way down if you can manage it. There were so many things that just that one short period of time created for me in terms of new approaches to how I train. I was still doing Muay Thai at the time, and I noticed a huge difference in my strength, my conditioning, or no, I take that back. I wasn't doing Muay Thai then. I had switched over to Krav Maga, but nevertheless, martial arts training. I definitely noticed a difference in my strength, speed, power, all that other stuff. And then probably by about 2011, I sacked up and I finally bought Pavel's DVD of The Naked Warrior, because I just couldn't figure, like, pistol squats. I managed to get the first time I tried them. They weren't pretty. I was not an expert, but I managed a pistol squat because I had enough mobility and stability and strength. One arm push-ups eluded me. Then I got his DVD and maybe watched the first 10 minutes, and I picked up something and I was like, oh, well, let me try that. Paused it, went to the middle of my bedroom, and I knocked out a one-arm push-up. And then it was like a veil was lifted from my eyes, and it was like I understood, like in the Matrix, where it's like, Neo, you're the one, and then he gets shot, and it was like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. And then the minute he like resurrects, he's like, oh, now he's the one. He was the guy who was supposed to become the one. He wasn't the one at the time. So it was similar to that. It was like this veil lifted from my eyes. Suddenly I understood everything, and I could block all of the kung fu punches that life threw at me for, just to keep me weak, let's just say. And so from then I really started to blend kettlebells and calisthenics training more seriously. And then within about that same year, I discovered a system that would later become known as Original Strength, which is more oriented around resetting the nervous system using the original operating system that we were given, which is the fundamental human movements, like deep diaphragmatic breathing, head control, rolling, rocking, gait pattern movements, and things like that. And so this is like we'll say the Cliff Notes version of how I've gotten to where I am today. And that all happened in a very short period of time. Just like all the best movies in Hollywood happened within a very short period of time. Exact same for me in terms of training.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. And do you think like like you kind of calisthenics and that type of training was, I'd say, a bit more appealing for you, purely like you say you got pinned on a bench like one of the first times you did it, like, I mean, I've been pinned too many times to imagine. But do you think that became like an option because it was like, well, my experience with that, then now someone's shown me this, and this gets me as well as I get it?
Yeah, there are certain, I remember Pavel talking about this at a workshop once. There are certain body types that favor certain types of strength training. So big guys typically do very well with barbell training, or it's easier for them to excel with barbell training. With people who have a smaller build, and at the time I weighed probably like 155 pounds, which is I don't know, I want to say 60 something kilos, 68 kilos, maybe something like that. And so it came a little more naturally to me. And I also had the gymnastics background. So I think, subconsciously, there were certain things that I understood, even if I couldn't verbalize them, that made it a little bit easier for me to excel with it. And, but the key is that if you can get good at barbell training as a smaller guy, or good at body weight training as a bigger guy, you can really unlock a ton of strength. Kettlebells are kind of that unique, like middle ground where it challenges everybody for different reasons about equally, you know.
Yeah.
And so for me, yeah, I found that calisthenics really helped to round out the experience that I had with strength training that was missing from barbell training, just because I had a slighter build. And I'm a bit larger now, but still, you know, I'm not like, you know, this hulking type of guy. And I've since taken on barbell training and had more success as a result, I think, of
Mm.
the combination of kettlebells and calisthenics. Because if you really break it down, you know, calisthenics is essentially training your body to move as a solid, interconnected unit through free space using strength.
Mm.
Whereas kettlebells, same basic idea, with the exception of learning how to move an external object, but doing so again as a solid, interconnected unit. And so, as soon as I was able to kind of integrate those things into my own physical
Yeah.
abilities, it made a lot of things easier. You know, I think
Mm.
for people who are bigger, it would probably be the reverse. It maybe be kettlebells and barbells, then help you to learn the lessons necessary to excel at calisthenics. For me, it was kettlebells and calisthenics. I wouldn't say I've ever excelled at barbell training, but I've definitely gotten significantly better at it than I ever did previously.
Yeah, and I think if we take it from the realm of like and to pursue and excel in becoming athletic, all
Yeah,
of those tools are really general in nature.
yeah,
So pick one
yeah,
and use it.
exactly.
And like I saw a study recently, or someone shared it to me that, you know, the push-up equates to a 60% 1 RM on the bench.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, that's deadly. Like you can get real strong and real fast and real powerful just by doing those basic movements. And I love all the old Soviet stuff. And I speak to a lot of the people in my coaching group about understanding conjugate sequencing, which I
Hmm.
think, you know, the you know, kettlebells and all that really understand that well. You know, like if you were to put a really simple methodology together, like from a long-term athletic development, which doesn't start with kids, it starts with people that haven't trained before. 101, push up, squat, calisthenic form.
Yeah,
Then maximum strength method through barbells comes about 2 years later.
big time.
And there's this world of exploration in between, which is obviously somewhere that you've positioned yourself so well in.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, I'd have to say too that your the order that you put it in is important, because I think that a lot of people, there are definitely barbell moves that are going to be a little bit more accessible to people from the beginning, but a
Mm.
lot of them are going to be made a lot better by getting the fundamental movement quality that you can build with calisthenics training if it's trained properly, that I think are a little harder to learn with a barbell, but are easier to apply with a barbell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you. And so, like um, with the with that system that you use now, right?
Mhm.
You've talked about the head movement, you've talked about the rocking, you've talked about all of these things. For a lot of coaches that may never have heard of this type of work before, or
Mhm.
because it's definitely not taught in undergrad and master's accreditations, I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
Paint that picture for us, please.
Sure. Well, the system itself is called Original Strength, and initially it was called Becoming Bulletproof. So, if anybody might remember that from back in like around 2011, a guy named Tim Anderson with his friend Mike McNiff wrote a book. I don't think you can get it anymore, but it was called Becoming Bulletproof, and later went on to become this. I mean, it was discovered by people in the kettlebell world in particular, and I remember I started using it pretty early on, because I was like, there's something to this that just makes sense. It was very similar to kettlebells in the sense that it's like you have to learn how to use your whole body for the purpose for which it was made. You know,
Mm,
I'm not one of those people who dislikes single joint movements. I think they're awesome. The one obvious drawback to them is that they don't necessarily help you to move better, but they can definitely get you stronger and build muscle in the muscle that it's supposed to work on. but the whole body is supposed to move as a unit as well. And so being able to cover both of those angles, you know, like single joint stuff, and then what we might call global movements, where
Yeah.
everything is designed to move all at once. Very, very important stuff. And I found that when I started doing these fundamental movements, everything started to get a lot easier. And you know, it sounds kind of strange, but if you think about it, we all understand the value of training the basics and getting really, really good at them. You know, I bet, you know, with the athletes that you train, you would probably find that the ones who really sharpen and excel at the basics are the ones that it is a lot easier to teach the advanced stuff to. And there can really be nothing more basic than the movements that we do as babies and toddlers to build up to the athletic movements that we're able to do later, like running, jumping, changing directions very quickly, etc. That all has to be built on a solid foundation. And so the original strength is a system that's just basically built around the human developmental sequence.
Yeah.
And the value of it is that it helps to, we say it in layman's terms, it helps to like reset the nervous system by simply using the original operating system of the body, which are these fundamental movement patterns, which still hold a lot of sway in how we get stronger. And so what it looks like in real time would be, again, learning how to breathe with the diaphragm, something that a lot of people have a great difficulty with. There's a lot of chest breathing, given the fact that we live very sedentary lives. Learning how to move the head and the neck, which is extremely important because movements of the head and neck are strongly connected to the muscles of the core and the back. So this kind of head movement, and plus you keep in mind your vestibular system is located in your inner ear. And your vestibular system is your balance system. So if you want to be athletic, you want to have this sort of like light speed reaction time when you're on the field, or even jumping out of the way of a oncoming car because the driver is a Zoomer who's, you know, texting or filming a TikTok video or God knows what. All of this stuff is very important. It has like very, very big everyday applications. And then from there, it moves into stuff like rolling, which is an excellent way to start. We can say, like, from an athletic standpoint, it's an excellent way to start working on spinal mobility and particularly rotation, which is a key skill for any athletic application. And of course, it's also teaching you how to move from place to place on the ground. So this is kind of the initial introduction that we have to locomotion, followed by rocking. And again, you can see babies do this. So if you have kids or you have nieces or nephews or what have you, you can see this developing. Nobody has to teach them to do these things. This is what the body is designed to do. Rocking is very important for integrating the entire body to move all at once, or for every joint and muscle to have a role in this movement. And equally important, I would say probably even more importantly, is that rocking is what helps set the S curve in the spine. So this is what helps you with your posture, which gives you the mechanical ability to stand upright, which is, again, you know, what's where athleticism lives. And then finally, the gait pattern, which helps to move the body, again, all as one piece from point A to point B. And it typically will start with crawling, and then it evolves into walking, and then running and sprinting and what have you.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, this is the system in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it. I'm just giving you like the broadest overview of it all. But I found that this is, in particular, I mentioned being very uncoordinated, and this is the thing that allowed me to, you know, like pat my head and rub my stomach at the same time. Because prior to that, it was like, you know, it was an exercise in futility to even try something so simple.
Well, it's so brilliant because, you know, original child researcher Jean Piaget, cognitive stages of development, all gross motor skill is developed by 2 years old. So it's part of my process with coaches is to humble them with that fact. That in essence, that a lot of the things that you're obsessing over are pre-built. So the change that you're making, it needs to be much more global. And so that insight in there, just from a conceptual point of view, really feels that nicely. And you think about it as well, you know, when you liken it, you know, the baby, they are, in order for them to survive, because that's essentially what it's trying to do, is taking advantage of leverage and finding the way. Like, we're all relatively built with the same bone structure. So that's where the fundamental leverage comes from, of which we create movement. So it's like,
Yeah.
it makes real good logical sense that this should be included. And so in your training, and I know we have to wrap up soon. Before we do, you're definitely coming back for another time to like really blow this system out and really talk more about it. But the for a lot of coaches out there, and me thinking straight away, like, I want to combine and bring this stuff into my speed sessions and my athletic prep stuff. Side note, I'm a massive fan of Pilates Reformer, because I think you're able to achieve a lot of stuff with big guys as well that you could never do otherwise.
Definitely.
And this kind of feels to me that it can go in that realm. I don't know. Sort of explain how you would feature it in with a winger in rugby or a wide receiver or a football player, something like that.
Yeah, the thing that I would say would be probably the easiest and most effective way to do it is to look at it in the same way that you look at strength training. You understand instinctively, because you are a good quality coach, that you're not trying to replicate the sport specific movements in the weight room, because you know that it's just damaging, unless they're like extremely high level. They just don't need to do like sports specific type of stuff. And even at that point, it doesn't need to dominate their training. And so the same is very much true with the original strength resets, is because these are the foundational and fundamental movements. You just apply that same mindset to like, okay, they might need to bench press, but they don't need to do anything like silly with the bench press, in order to get better at it, or to have that strength apply on the field. Likewise with the deadlift and stuff like that. And your main focus is to use that as a means of making them better at the sport that they're already practicing. So they've got to do both of those things. And on the movement side of things, where I think the practice comes into play is number one, the obvious thing. This is not the only application, but would be for a warm up. So getting them, we might say they just movement prep, getting them prepped to move better. And if they have certain deficiencies, such as, they don't breathe well using the diaphragm, or they have issues using their head and neck properly, or lack of coordination, these would be drills that you could toss in between other drills. So it could be either done at the beginning, in between, it can be done at the end. And because it is so overarching in terms of the impact that it can have, you don't necessarily need to worry about the minutia, at least not at the beginning. You get them started doing it, and then you kind of narrow it down into maybe certain variations or progressions that they might do better with. That would be the way to do it, is just apply that same strength and conditioning mindset to the movement side of things. And I think it will integrate itself very quickly and very easily.
I'm so glad you said that. Because that's it, right? It's all the same. It's where it fits, and how you kind of bake the cake. And I just made a connection with Scott Livingston, King of Pain, on Instagram, and he's very much along your lines in terms of like the neuro reconditioning side of things and understanding those principles. And I've kind of like opened up a minefield for myself with it. But I think the wonderful thing that what you're saying here in terms of the integration of this type of work into your training, it doesn't need to be too complicated, and it's a very easy slide in.
Exactly. It's basically it's like a puzzle piece that is very identifiable with the thing that you're trying to fill in. You just add the puzzle piece. That's it. There's no complex code or anything like that. And again, you can always dive deeper into the details of any system. But initially, you start with the simple stuff. You just make notes of what seems to be getting better, what stayed the same, what's getting worse. And this will just give you an idea of the direction to take it. Like if you've got an athlete who doesn't do well with the deadlift, but maybe really excels with the power clean, and it gets the results that you need. Well, like, okay, so you're going to do power cleans. We're not going to worry so much about deadlifts, or, you're going to squat, wider stance. You're going to squat narrower stance. Minor changes like that are up to the coaches, the art side of coaching, let's say, where there's not such an easy way to say, well, scientifically it should be X, Y, Z, but using your best judgment, very, very much the same. I would think that with just a minor amount of learning, you can really learn how to start integrating it, and it's all gentle stuff. So it's not likely to cause any sort of pain or injury or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this type of work. I was speaking to my legacy coaching group this morning, and we got onto the topic of impulse and all this sorts of stuff. But it turned out that by the end of it, I was doing a workshop on the psychological attachment to barbell lifts for athletic development.
Yeah,
And it's funny how this conversation comes in, because what you're talking about is the essence of athletic movement based on fundamentals, which
bingo.
which essentially where we are now is largely a clusterfuck, basically, because whether a lot of coaches listening to this fail to admit it, if they ever do a barbell cycle, they do an eights wave or something on a bench or a deadlift or whatever, they are fucked. Their joints are shot to shit. They feel bad. Like, your stress is through the roof.
Yeah,
So what? You put some more weight on the bar, you can't go and perform. But what happens? That program, because the weight goes on the bar, gets written into the next athlete's program.
yep.
Program then takes an athlete to the field. That same feeling goes to the field. And it blows my mind, where what we're trying to do here, and what I hear you saying, is we're essentially undoing that bias and undoing all the work and that's compounded by that heavy overload to actually use that heavy overload when we need it at the right time in the right way.
Bingo. In the US, we have a saying when it comes to American football, which is looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure you've heard this too, because you have to keep in mind that obviously the weight room numbers are cool, but if they don't translate onto the pitch or onto the field, it's really irrelevant. So you have to break that bias. Even the stuff that you love, you have to be able to say, okay, if this is not going to help us achieve our goal, which is not to be powerlifters or Olympic lifters, but to win this championship, to win this game, to progress to the next level, you gotta be willing to slash things out, even that you love, and add things in, even that maybe you don't find very exciting.
Yeah, love it. What a great way to finish as well. We're literally bang on time. That's awesome.
Nice.
Thank you, man.
Very nice.
We will do a longer part 2. We've been trying to get this done, so I'm glad we got it. For those
Likewise.
listening, plug your shit, mate. Plug it. Where can they
Oh,
find
great.
you?
Okay.
What can you offer them? How can they learn more from you?
Well, I'll tell you what, we talked briefly about, bootlegging and downloading and stuff like that. And so I'm going to assume that that's the first thing that people are going to want to do. So I highly recommend that you get my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. It's free. So it's designed for you to be downloaded. You can do it with an easy heart. You're not stealing anything. Okay. If you go to 9minutechallenge.com, that's the number 9minutechallenge.com. You can get your own free copy. It is based around the gait pattern movements in order to get stronger and better conditioned, better coordinated. As the name implies, it only takes 9 minutes to do. It's gentle on the body, so it can be done daily, and it's oriented around movements like crawling, loaded carries, and the other kind of things that are going to have a nice carryover into your sports training, your workouts. And again, it's not gonna tear you down. It's gonna build you up. So 9minutechallenge.com. Have at it. And if you find that interesting, of course, I've got plenty of information products. I have a best-selling book on Amazon. You can get those later. But right now, go with the free thing. Kind of see what I'm about. If you like it, you can go ahead and do it. If you think this is not really my type of thing, no harm, no foul, no hard feelings.
Epic. I'm gonna try it tomorrow. And I love that you just casually dropped in a best-selling book on Amazon. So
I figured I would mention that. I thought it was maybe slightly worthy of mention.
So good. Awesome. Right. Thanks, everyone. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share it to your friends, share it to your mom, whoever thinks you need to see this. That was another episode of Sports Talks. I will see you next time.